I want to welcome everyone to our weekly update. Our prior updates have all focused around the COVID-19 issue. In light of the recent tragic events surrounding the untimely death of George Floyd, we decided last week to focus this week's program on a discussion on law enforcement. Are changes needed? We have a great panel today, and I am looking forward to hearing their comments, their input. I'm also looking forward to hearing from the media and the public. I do want to note, if you would like to comment, please use the Q&A application on Microsoft Teams. If you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, we are also monitoring both of those platforms, and you can ask a question there. If you're from the media, please identify who you are and what media you represent. You may ask multiple questions of the panelists. If you're from the public, you're limited to one comment or one question. It must be germane to the topic, and you must include your name and the municipality where you reside. The program today, I think, is very important. We're dealing with an issue that is unfortunately not new to this country. I'm proud of the law enforcement folks that serve us here in our community. But based on the discussions we've had, I believe there are things that we can do better, and we need to come out of this tragedy with more than political rhetoric, with more than speeches and marches. There needs, in my opinion, to be real change. And we're focusing at the county, looking at what we can do in the areas that we have direct responsibility for. That would be our Berks County Jail. Indirectly, through our HR department, we work closely with our district attorney, and indirectly through our HR department, we work closely with our sheriff. We also hope that this effort and this discussion encourages municipalities that oversee policing or cities that oversee policing to look at some of the same issues. And then we hope that the public will understand, if we want to make a difference that is meaningful, we need to focus on solutions that really address the issue and not, again, political rhetoric. So with that, I want to turn over the meeting for a few comments to the Vice Chair of our Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Kevin Barnhart.
Thank you, Commissioner Leinbach, and everyone who has elected to participate today. I won't take a lot of time because I think the valuable time is to hear from our people in law enforcement. And I am really proud of our community that we had peaceful protests thus far, no violence. That's a testament to our community, because I think this is a community conversation. No one's perfect on either side. We want to make sure we get to the point where we're all doing better at what we do. Certainly, we're not adversarial. You want to get to the root cause of some of the problems and try to solve them. And let's build trust and confidence in law enforcement. I think that's sorely needed in today's society. They are our friends. They are out there helping us to maintain order and keep peace in the community. And I really tip my hat to everyone that's in law enforcement. It's a thankless job. And let's move on and try to help heal these wounds in our community and make us an even better place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. Commissioner Rivera. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Commissioner Leinbach. Just want to say thank you to all the people that are on this call. I know it's not easy to be on this call. You never know, what you're going to hear or what type of response you're going to get. But thank you for being on here, for sharing your point of view, and for being willing to answer some of the difficult questions that you may be answered today. So I appreciate you being on here today. I just wanted to add on Sunday, there is a members of the Conrad Weiser community organized a peaceful walk. It's about 2 miles to spread love and stand up against hate. So if you are available on Sunday, please feel free to go. It's at 12 p.m. and they will be meeting at the Robisonia Borough Hall. And again, it's a peaceful walk, and it's to stand up against hate. So if you have an opportunity, please join on Sunday there. We want to make sure that everything that's being done is being done in a peaceful way, in a way that we're all sharing what we have to say, but with doing it in a way that's respectful to others. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching in, and I hope you find the information today valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rivera. I want to start by introducing the entire group that are acting as our panelists on law enforcement. I think it's important that we start by understanding that we have a wide array of representatives from Berks County and local law enforcement. I'm going to share their names in the order that they will be presenting and what will be taking place. I've asked each of these individuals to share from their heart what they think law enforcement does well, what they need to do better, and any ideas that they may have relative to the response to the tragedy of the death of George Floyd. Our first panelist is going to be John Adams. John Adams is our Berks County District Attorney. After that, we'll hear from Janine Quigley. Janine Quigley is our Berks County Jail Warden. Then we'll hear from Eric Weaknecht, our Berks County Sheriff. After that, we'll hear from Stephen Powell. He is the West Reading Chief of Police. He is also head of the Berks County Chiefs of Police Association. After that, we're going to hear from Reading Police Officer Marc Hackney and Reading Police Officer Hector Santiago. And then we're going to hear from another police officer, Muhlenberg Township Detective Sergeant Ramon Caraballo. Then we're going to hear from one of our deputy sheriffs in the Berks County Sheriff's Department, Zachary Smith. We'll hear then from Berks County Jail Captain Miguel Castro, and wrapping it up for the presentations from our Berks County District Attorney's Office and Detective Unit, Sergeant Gerardo Vega. We're very glad to have each of you on our panel, and we're going to begin with our District Attorney, John Adams.
Thank you, Commissioner Leinbach, and I want to thank all the participants in this panel. It's an unfortunate subject that we have to discuss today, but as I said 2 weeks ago, and I think I speak probably for every member of this panel, we are disgusted about the tragic death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And I stated this type of behavior by police will never be tolerated in our community. And with that said, I want to reassure our members of our community that I have the utmost faith in law enforcement in Berks County. We always can improve and do a better job. There's no question about that. But we are well trained, and we have spent a considerable amount of money since 2011. I think I got some facts. We spent over $120,000 training police. And that's just from monies from the county. There are monies that departments have spent. We are well trained, and yes, there are incidents that take place, but it is important to know that police and prosecutors in our county have the highest level of integrity, and now and then there will be someone that errs and they will be held responsible for their error. But integrity is very important to me. It's very important to the process. in the criminal justice system. It's very important that everyone is treated fairly, humanly, and is treated the same. And it is imperative that I have always looked at the criminal justice system as looking at it as being colorblind. We need to look and we need to deal with individuals with blinders on. And I believe we do a good job of that here in Berks County, and we will continue to do that. We've done a lot to bring about some integrity in the system. Almost all of our police departments have been outfitted by me with audio and video recording equipment, so that when we are interviewing defendants and witnesses, those interviews are all taped so that there can't be any question about the integrity of the interview process. We also are doing our best to be progressive, and I think we have a very progressive system here in Berks County. We spend a lot of money to remove people from the criminal justice system who have mental health issues. We've diverted over 600 people since 2012 out of the criminal justice system into the mental health system where they belong. We are always looking for improvements. We're always looking for input from the public, and we're always looking for not only police but prosecutors to be fair and just. And I don't want to take up too much time because we have a lot of people here who are on the front lines. And I think that listening to those individuals who are on the front lines and interact with the public each and every day, and that those are tough. And the police officers have a tough job, and it's only getting tougher with incidents like took place in Minneapolis. And I vow as the district attorney that we will not, again, tolerate that type of incident. But I'm confident also to say that with the good training that we've received in our county, that it won't take place. We're going to be hearing more about some bills in the near future that have been proposed, and we'll see if what passes. And if we have to implement some changes, I'm happy to do so. Anything to improve our system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John Adams. Appreciate your leadership. Our next speaker is Janine Quigley, and she is the Berks County Jail Warden.
Thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate being included in this conversation. Those of us at the jail do not have arrest powers like those in the community policing, but we face a lot of the similar issues that the folks in law enforcement outside of the jail face. So I really appreciate being part of this conversation. What happened to George Floyd is just absolutely sickening to me. The fact that no one intervened to save him is appalling. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here in thinking of these issues that we're all discussing today. In the Berks County jail system, we have an extremely high expectation regarding the sanctity of human life. It starts with the hiring process. We actively seek those who have high ethical standards. We screen for people who will respect the rights of the inmates, not engage in discrimination and oppression. And we seek individuals who are going to be willing to maintain a really strict, impartial attitude towards all inmates. We start with an interview process, which is designed to start assessing the value that an applicant places on integrity. I can teach someone how to put handcuffs on. I can't teach someone to have integrity. So we know that some of the skills they're going to need to use working here, we can develop that in the training. So the most important thing that we look for is a candidate with integrity. The likelihood that they're going to make good, moral, independent decisions, including their ability to have the fortitude to intervene and stop unconstitutional conduct if they see it happening. Once we get past the interview process, folks get moved on and get a conditional offer of employment, and a psychologist will sit with them and review psychological tests, the background history, and we'll start to interview and look at the interview behavior and the responses. And again, we're looking for the same kinds of things. Is somebody going to be assertive, not aggressive? Can someone assess a situation and respond appropriate within the policy guidelines without bias? And we're looking for someone in this stage who has the fortitude to intervene, even when that other person may be of a higher rank, more senior officer, or their buddy. I often hear that it's really difficult to get into the jail. Gee, I put an application in, why can't I get hired? And that is the truth. Out of about 100 applications that we receive, 8 folks get hired. That could mean we have 12 vacancies and only 8 get hired because we believe maybe the other candidates are questionable and we're just not willing to take that risk. And none of this is a foolproof system, we know that. So then we put further protections in place as folks move on into the training academy. In Pennsylvania, all correctional officers are required to attend the Department of Corrections, the state training academy. We are fortunate here in Berks that the state came in and certified us to have an on-site academy. What that allows us to do is cover the material required by state guidelines, but also infuse a lot of detail that we believe is specific to our philosophies and our beliefs and our operations here in Berks. It also allows us to extend the time frame and conduct training for a good 10 weeks before somebody actually gets in a position of working independently in the jail. We include cultural diversity, numerous days of use of force that include not only policies, but instructors who watch how someone responds to scenarios and practical exercises. And one of the other 8-hour courses is conduct and ethical expectations. And I believe as a leader of an agency like this, that it's incumbent upon me to be the one that does that training. So since about 2006, maybe earlier than that, I have spent 8 hours with each cadet in the academy and give them my expectations for behavior. One of the things I do at the end of the day is I point to the door and say, I know this sounds tough, but if you can't buy into what I've said today, if you can't carry yourself in the way we've explained that we expect, then there's the door, no harm, no foul, and it's better to leave now. Once a cadet graduates from the academy and completes some shadowing time with other officers, they are taking posts sometimes with 80, 90 inmates by themselves. So we want to make sure that we have protections in place moving forward as well. Our captain, Castro, who's going to speak later, is going to get into a little more detail about how he supervises his staff, what happens with use of force incidents, and what protections are in place further. So I've told you a lot of protections that I think I have on the front end. He's going to tell you a lot. And so then we say, well, are changes needed? Well, now's not the time to be defensive and dismissive. That's how I look at this. I believe it's incumbent upon every warden, every law enforcement leader to stop, listen, and most importantly, understand the deep issues that are being raised right now. Despite how much we believe we're already doing, we can always enhance it, we can always expand it. There's 5 layers of protection, let's make it 10. However, I think that in order to be responsive, we need to understand what the issues are. And I think that's where in society today, I get frustrated because we all tend to just jump to conclusions, criticize, condemn. We don't take the time to get the facts sometimes, and we don't take the time to find a new vantage point to look at somebody else's point of view, to understand what and why others are expressing a need to be heard. I want to share an article with you that I read. I didn't save it, and I wish I could give credit to the author, but it really sent a message home to me about how important it is to understand someone else's perspective. And someone asked this author, okay, if somebody says Black Lives Matter, and then somebody responds and says all lives matter, why does that get you upset with that response? And the author said, well, let me give it to you this way. Put yourself in these shoes and let me use an analogy. Your ankle hurts and you go to an orthopedic specialist. And when you go to the orthopedic specialist, he walks in the room and he says, so what's wrong? You say, my ankle hurts. It might be broken. And he says, your ankle? Yeah, my ankle bone. Oh, well, all bones matter. So how would you feel, he said, if your issue today and the pain and the issue that you're having is your ankle and your doctor just dismisses you and says, well, everything matters, right? Because he took an oath to give you the best treatment possible, to assess the situation, to give you an x-ray, to then say, okay, here's a course of treatment if we find that we need to make some adjustments for your life so that you can have a better life. And he explained it that way. And it just really resonated with me, and I really wanted to just share that today. You know, we trust the doctor to follow the oath to provide the best medical care, and we've all taken oaths as well. And so I think we need to do the same for those in leadership positions in all law enforcement agencies. I can tell you about the protective policies that we have in place. I can tell you one story after the other about staff members that I have witnessed put their life on the line to save and protect inmates. I have seen calm in the face of chaos in this place. Despite that, it would be irresponsible of me to be dismissive of these issues. I think that we need to take a deep look here into our hiring, our oath of office. I just pulled our oath of office. I want to update that, the training and everything that we're doing, because we can add layers of protection. There's no place in this jail system for excessive, unnecessary use of force, prejudice, criminal behavior, discrimination. And if someone sees it happening, they have to continue to know that the intervention is mandatory and that they will be supported for intervening. And I don't want people working here who do it because we tell them they have to. I want people working here who do it because it's the right thing to do, and that's what they believe. So I do think it's time for us to take a critical look, and I do think that we can make changes and we can make things better. Thank you for including me.
Thank you very much, Warden Quigley. And with that, we'll move to our next presenter, our Berks County Sheriff, Eric Weaknecht.
Thank you very much for having me. I think this is an awesome forum, and we need to communicate with the public as much as possible in law enforcement on what we do and how we do it and why we do it. To touch on some of the hiring procedures that we use, because I think it's very important that that's where it starts. You want to make sure that you hire the right people. One of the utilities we use, and we have been since I've been sheriff, is a video-based testing, which doesn't only test a scenario-based opinion of a person, but it shows us if they have the ability to restrain their use of authority. I think that's extremely important. Their ethical orientation and their ability to understand and help with human distress. The system we use to test potential deputies, it's a 4-hour test. It's nothing that's everything is touched on, and it does a great job. But once a deputy is hired, you need to continue the training. And one of the changes we made last year was we got away from what a lot of departments do. They give a person an SOP, a manual, and they print it out and they hand it to their officers. And their officers are supposed to read through it, familiarize themselves with it. But what happens is it gets thrown in a desk, it gets thrown in a locker somewhere, and it's only brought out when the deputy gets in trouble. 2 years ago, we switched to an online online policy manual. And it's not only on the computer, but it's also on every smartphone. The deputies will be able to use it on their smartphone. And we did that because our policies change several times a month. New laws come out, our policies are updated. When you have a legal opinion, our policies are updated. So we don't print them out because we don't want someone to get a hold of an old policy. The other nice feature is they have all of our policies in the palm of their hand so that they can do a key search on a word, a phrase, or anything else and have the policy and procedure right there in their hand and know exactly what they are to do. And that's important because policies are very complex, and for you to remember every single policy is almost impossible. But be able to have the ability to look up what you need to do and what the policy is, it's perfect. We also get updates every year on legal updates and different types of scenario training. We are way in front of that here because when a law change comes out from a court decision, when the deputies log on to their manual, it's going to tell them this policy was changed. It's going to force them to review the policy, accept the policy, and then they will know what the current law is, which is really important as well. We cover everything in our policies, and as soon as this happened, I wanted to see if we were covered on the use of force. If the deputy sees another officer using excessive use of force, and it is completely covered. They are to immediately stop, engage, report it to a supervisor, write a report, and again, that is one of our policies that we stress upon all of our deputies here at the Sheriff's Office. But I think it's important to make sure you're hiring the law enforcement officer right from the start that is going to be doing the right job, going to be trained properly, and have the attitude and the good attitude you need to be in law enforcement. We do an extensive background check to the point where we will even go to the potential deputy's home. We will interview their neighbors. We will interview personally their prior employers and their friends and contact information. And we want to get to the bottom of, is this person going to be the proper law enforcement officer with the ability to take someone's civil rights away from them in a second on an arrest, and we want to make sure that they're experienced and doing the right job. Deputy Zach Smith, who is here also on this panel, he is one of the instructors who not only is right at the beginning when we do our physical agility testing, he also is a defensive instructor, a defensive tactics instructor, and he does a lot of hands-on training with the deputies, and he is going to talk about that as well later on. But thank you again for having me here.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Weaknecht. Our next presenter is the West Reading Chief of Police, also the head of the Berks County Chiefs of Police Association, and that is Chief Stephen Powell. Welcome.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate being invited to attend and participate. I'm going to echo some of the comments already made. The death of George Floyd was a failure on multiple levels. I don't think anyone who's a professional law enforcement officer can look at that and think anything went right there at all. I can't find a reason for why that occurred, and the disdain or the apparent disdain for that man, for Mr. Floyd, is disturbing, because one of the things we stress is preservation of life at all times. We talk about that constantly. And just the violation of basic law enforcement practices or just basic decency was extremely disturbing. We are trained from early on in the academy that we, at some point or at some time, you may use force to overcome resistance. But when the resistance ceases, so does the force. That is over and over during academy training. You were told, yes, you may be required to use force, but once the resistance is overcome, the force should cease. A couple things that strike me about how we conduct law enforcement in Berks County, having dealt with many of the chiefs and leaned on them for advice and spoken in the last couple of weeks with not only the district attorney, Ramon Caraballo, and some others, and Ed Mahalik. Three words kind of come to mind: dignity, respect, and fairness. That is basically the backbone of community trust. All right, treating people with dignity, respect, and fairness. Perception is reality. So you have to keep that in mind. We constantly go over the tenets of procedural justice: dignity, respect, and fairness. Community involvement, input, and response to how we deliver services is important. We want the community's assistance in telling us what they need and what they expect. We can use that assistance to strengthen our relationships. Professional organizations lead to professional conduct. Being a leader means being accountable to those you lead, not only expecting accountability up the chain, being accountable down the chain of command. Consistent and relentless efforts to improve. We should all be looking to locate best practices and tailoring those best practices to our own agencies. I think that occurs quite often. Like the sheriff spoke of, we too have a computer-based system that allows any officer in our department to access any policy, either via smartphone, via desktop computer, or via his mobile data terminal in his vehicle. It's also important to use your agency experts to help you write policy. We use our firearms instructors, we use our evidence technicians, we use our K-9 officer. to assist us in writing policy that makes sense and utilize best practices. When we use our agency experts, we get buy-in from our agency. We create that circle of trust within ourselves. When we train, I think it's important not only to have specialized training directed towards the officers, but they should also get leadership training from early in their careers. Understanding the expectation of those of us who lead agencies creates that, again, that back and forth communication, those open lines of communication that assist in improving our agencies. And certainly ownership in the organization and within the community. It's important that officers, whether they're a patrol officer, a detective, a supervisor, or a chief of police, that we care about each other and we care about the communities we serve. In fact, we care enough to say something's wrong and we need to fix it. I think we do several things in Berks County already that are being spoken about now on a national level. Like the district attorney talked about, we have done significant de-escalation training in Berks County, both through our mandatory in-service training from the state, but also on a local level with Dr. Mahalik, the head of the Berks County mental health agencies. He has, like the DA said, we've spent over $120,000 on de-escalation training, PTSD training, safe schools training, and crisis negotiations training. Not only is it the county doing that, but they're partnered up with the Chiefs of Police Association and also the FOP, which I think is important. Some of this training is from the bottom up. It's not necessarily just being told, hey, we're going to go do this. Some of this comes from the officers themselves who have to engage every day with the public. Some additional items that we are doing here and doing well, we have a mental health diversion program already. Since I think it's 2012, we've diverted over 600 individuals at police point of contact away from the criminal justice system into treatment, which I think is a tremendous success. We are engaged in a program called Blue Cares, where department personnel go out with, again, counselors to address people who are victims of overdoses. Now, again, not to arrest people, not to be a show of force, but to try to convince them that, hey, you might want to get into some treatment. This is, there are opportunities, there are programs available to assist you, things we can be involved in other than enforcing the law. One of the other things I'd like to point out that if there is an officer involved shooting in Berks County, the district attorney is already the lead agency. That is not done internally. The DA's office does an independent investigation from the individual departments. So those are a few of the things I think that Berks County does well. Certainly we can improve, and I think law enforcement is a profession that if you're not improving, if you're not moving forward, you're actually moving backwards. If you're staying the same, you're actually moving backwards. I believe that, again, you have to continue to look for and implement policies that improve the way we deliver services, policies that improve the way we interact with the public, and policies that improve the way we deliver public safety. So I guess in closing, I would just say, again, thank you for including me in this. I certainly look forward to hearing from the rest of the panel. And I just wanted to say to the warden, that was an incredibly powerful presentation, and I appreciate the words she said. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Our Chief Powell, really appreciate your perspective and giving us somewhat of a perspective of chiefs across the county of Berks. Our next presenter is a Reading police officer, Marc Hackney. Marc, share with us, please. Are you muted, Marc? Just want to hit *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go, Marc.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I get the luxury of being the first patrolman after all those great speakers speak.
No, you're the frontline people. We need to hear from you.
This situation was a tragedy for human beings in general. And I know a lot of people who are listening are going to say you're just being cliche, but as a black male, I cannot sit up here, and as an officer, I cannot sit up here and say that was a tragedy just for black people. That was a tragedy for everyone because it changed our whole country. So no one won in this. This was a struggle for me personally after this was going on, because I come from a diverse background of being a Black male, being a police officer, but also being married to a Caucasian female. This hit me because it seemed like everybody wanted to hear my opinion, being the fact that I was very diverse, and it was hard to come up with an answer. But the one thing I can honestly say is I'm not going to sit up here and point fingers at anyone, at any race, because nobody wins in these situations. The store owners didn't win in these situations. The owners in the Black community didn't win in the situations. The people who were hurt didn't win. The police officers didn't win. And I think we have to narrow down things of what this really is. And I speak this way because I don't want people that are not of color to look at us and feel sorry. I think in this situation, there are people, there's some that are ignorant, but there are a lot of people out there that just want to be loved, just like everybody else in the grand scheme of things. And that's it. I listen to a lot of people speak on different policies and things that are changing, and I look at the situation and I'm like, you know, a lot of the answers, there's no one answer, but a lot of the answers aren't scientific. This is about teaching and teaching people how to deal with people with dignity. When we deal with people on the street, looking forward to hopefully resolving the situation with our mouth and not with our hands and not with force. The one thing that being a veteran in this department, almost 16 years, the one thing I stress with our younger guys is you don't have to take this job personal. Coming from the city environment, working in the city environment, there's a lot of our guys that have never worked in an inner city, have never dealt with inner city issues until they get a badge of authority. And there's no program to introduce these guys to educate them on who the people are. So that was actually one of the things I wanted to bring up as far as how we can change things within our department. Now, I can't speak for every single department because we've all come from different environments. But that was definitely high on my list for our department. This isn't hard, and not everything we do is bad. And I think right now there's a lot of people, there are legit people who are hurting because of the things that we've seen. And it's hard for us because we know for a fact we're not all like that. So how do we get past that? One thing we have between us and the community we serve are barriers. And one of the largest barriers are the police vehicle. Most of the time, we go to our call, we go to the call. If we're not called, we'll patrol around for a while, and then we go park. How much time do we spend getting to know the people of our community? When I came onto the job, that was one thing that was stressed to me by the late Scott Wirtz. And the one thing that he told me about this job, he said, if you remember anything from what I'm teaching you is get to know the people. And I can honestly say I have used that since my FTO program almost 16 years ago. And it has been the best weapon I've had on my body is talking, my mouth. Another thing is turning a blind eye. Once upon a time when I first started, it was, well, I didn't do it, so it didn't happen. It's not on me. Can't do that. We can't do that now. We have to hold each other accountable. Because as you can see, when we don't hold each other accountable, it affects everybody. We as police officers are suffering because of 1 to 4 people that were involved in this incident. So we need to hold each other accountable, and instead of having the I don't snitch mentality, which we hate when people do to us. Mm-hmm. other things that I was actually against initially, but now will become our best ally is body cameras. I come from the old regime where we didn't have body cameras, and back then you didn't have social media. And I think it was 2002 when the first cell phone camera came out, and nobody was really interested. So it was only until social media came out that people really started adopting the cell phones with the cameras. Well, we only have one perspective now, and that's basically the people who saw the incident and their view of what went on. So basically, the only thing we have is pen and paper, and that's it. And I believe with the way things are changing, I think that needs to be put on the top of the list as far as becoming our ally. Because as you can see, video speaks a million words. Recruiting minorities. This isn't just for the police departments, but this is for the community. And let me explain why. In the white community, and we'll say suburban community, okay, a lot of people have never had encounters with minorities, and if they have, it's at work, if that. So their best perception of who minorities are is through the TV. And we watch TV, and what do you see? You see on the news, there's a black or Spanish male getting arrested. Number two, have you watched the show 48, was it Another 48? I told my wife, I have never seen anybody other than of color getting arrested on that show for a homicide. And by me bringing that up is, this is all they have. Also, in the black community, there's a lot of people that are in the black community that have never lived in a white community. So what's their perception? It's no different from what they hear, from what they see. When I was younger and I was watching TV, I used to watch Silver Spoons in the 80s and all the shows that showed white people with big houses. I loved watching those shows because that was my perception of what white people were like, because I was in the inner city. So as you can see, if we were to recruit more minorities, so other minorities can be officers, to change people's perception where they're just not getting it from TV, where they hear all the negative. I think it's not the only answer, but I think it's a huge step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer Hackney, and we're going to stick with our Reading police officer theme. Very glad to have Officer Hector Santiago.
Hey, how you doing? This is Officer Santiago. I appreciate. How you doing? Thank you for having me in this panel. I'd like to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to actually speak. As a minority officer, I would like to say that what happened to that individual is heartbreaking. No officer that I know would accept what happened as being right. I feel heartbroken. I sat down with my kids and actually explained to them what happened, and even my kids, they are actually heartbroken about all this. But I'd like to let the community know not all officers are like that individual. A lot of people think that we as officers live through this code called the blue line. We do, but we live in a society that we actually have to protect the community because that's our job. I didn't become a police officer just to carry a gun or a badge. I became an officer to protect people that can't protect themselves. I became an officer to do good. I don't want anybody to feel that they cannot trust me. One of the reasons why I became an officer was I felt pride and seeing people in this line of work going out there and doing right for the community. And that's one of the reasons why I became an officer. As a minority officer, I feel that the community trusts me more because I kind of understand where they're coming from. I didn't live in any high areas growing up. I lived in New York City, where a lot of violence occurred. I've seen a lot of things that I shouldn't have seen as a child, but it actually made me the person that I am. And I try to pass that along to my kids as well. One of the things I feel that is very important as an officer is, like Officer Hackney says, is getting to know our community. One of the reasons I love being a canine handler is because as a canine handler, people tend to come up to me and feel comfortable in talking to me in regards to getting to know the canine. I use that to my advantage to get to know the people that I help close the gap that we have. It's something that is very, very important that I feel as an officer is gaining the trust of the people we serve, learning what their problems are and learning how we can help them. I feel the new officers coming on today's world, they have a big challenge. And the big challenge is trying to learn what different cultures go through. Not everybody from Puerto Rico, not everybody from Mexico, not everybody from Dominican Republic understands or realizes how different everybody lives and what their beliefs are. It is something that we as officers have to adapt, have to learn, and I feel we came a long way in a lot of areas, but sometimes officers, new officers, don't know how to interact with people, and it's up to us senior officers to teach them. I've been an officer for 17 and a half years, and I'm constantly trying to help the new officers. And I think we came to a point that everybody knows or kind of understands where to go if they don't know their information. They tend to go to myself, Officer Hackney, or other senior officers. We need to stick together. Training is very important. And I feel that we came a long way when it comes to that. I'd like to thank everybody in this panel for letting me speak and understand that we are here to help each other out. Thank you. Hello?
Are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Commissioner Lineback, you're muted.
Okay, that was a good one. Thank you very much, Officer Santiago. I appreciate your comments. Our next presenter will be Detective Sergeant from the Muhlenberg Township Police Department, Ramon Caraballo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the commissioners, first of all, for putting this together and for inviting me to take part in it. These types of issues have always been on my mind. I've dedicated a lot of time over the years working with the community to try to better the relationships that we have. A lot of the topics I was actually going to cover have been covered already, so I'm just going to kind of go over some of the main points. These past couple of weeks have been very tough. I've had some very promising conversations with people, both in the public and in law enforcement. At the same time, I've had some very disappointing conversations, both in law enforcement as well as with the public. We've seen things like this happen before, but this is different. The disregard that officer had in Minneapolis for that man's life and his callous demeanor, I think, sent shockwaves not just in the United States, but throughout the world. I was fortunate enough to be able to participate working with the two large Black Lives Matter protests that we had here, the two largest ones in Berks County. The first one, I participated in my role with Berks County Emergency Response Team. The latter, the second, which was in Spring Township, Detective Bob Long contacted me for assistance as they tried to engage the organizers ahead of the protest. And I have to say that what I've seen, even with the protests in this county, it's a testament to who we are as police officers, and a testament to the people that are organizing this with how peaceful they've been. The grievances are legitimate. This is an outrage. I don't know how else to explain it. That being said, you know, part of the issues I've seen that have really bothered me these last 2 weeks is on both sides again. What we're seeing on TV, what we're seeing coming out of New York City during the time when it wasn't protests alone, but also accompanied by what I call the night shift of lawlessness. Not to confuse the two, I believe people were legitimately protesting in all these places also. Unfortunately, bad news is what gets out. And I saw how people around here, around me, started to adopt what was going on in these other cities as if it was happening here. And I found it very difficult to relate to people what I was seeing, because people want to believe what they see on TV, just like the other officer mentioned. That's what's on 24/7. This is what they're watching. And let's face it, that's how the news makes money. So in regards to that, my message to anyone watching, police officers, citizens, look around your community. We're not Minneapolis. We're not New York City, and we're not Philadelphia. And it's not that I don't empathize with the officers working those front lines during the lawlessness period, because I have family and friends working those front lines. I'm just saying, don't, in a way, like radicalize yourself watching this on TV and in some way think that that's what's happening in our backyard, because our community is better than that. And I really believe that. I think the majority of people in our community have shown a lot of patience and restraint. Same thing for the police departments. We've worked together, we've marched with these kids. And like I said before, it's a testament to law enforcement and to these communities. Because maybe there's no outrage there as we've seen in other places, because our communities here don't feel so violated because we've been doing a decent job. So what I want to touch on is, it goes without saying, you know, what I think of my profession. I'm very proud of the job I do. I'm very proud of the job my colleagues do for the most part. I would be disingenuous to say that in my 20 years, I've never seen bad officers, because we all have. The problem is that going forward, we need to empower officers to correct the officers that are going the wrong way, that are starting to show a pattern of abuse, even if it just starts with physical abuse, because things incrementally can get worse. So I want to touch on some what I would call like a risk assessment and preventive measures for us to begin to employ here that would hopefully help to make sure that we never have an incident even closely related to that here in our beautiful Berks County. I mean, I believe that one of the greatest contributing factors to the issues we're having with policing when it comes to the problem officers is the police culture that some of them become ingrained in. In my opinion, in my 20 years, this is what I've seen, and I will make a little example about my career. So I started here in Muhlenberg Township 20 years ago. I was the first minority officer hired here. I'm coming to work with mainly older white males at that time. When people stereotype, they would think that I had a really difficult time here because of being the first minority officer to come in, and maybe that I suffered a lot of discrimination and racism, and I honestly didn't. I'm not gonna say there wasn't maybe one little microaggression or something, but really nothing serious and nothing that couldn't be handled with a little man-to-man talk. And then we continue on. Unfortunately, that was the culture that I came into, which like I said before, most people would think I had a hard time. I actually didn't. I was part of a team. I was valued. My opinions mattered. The expertise I brought from being a minority who was raised in the city, they really listened to me on how to talk to people and how we dealt with people from different backgrounds. So I have nothing but gratitude for that, because I really, my beginning of my career was wonderful. As time has gone on, I have noticed a change in the police culture. And I attribute this to the advent of social media and a lot of the extremist ideologies and conspiracy theories that are put out there that a lot of people buy into. So that's one of the things that I believe is negatively impacting police culture. I'm not saying that anybody's dying over it here. I'm not saying that anyone, but as people continue to dive into these obscure websites and get their minds filled, especially if you're police officers, with some really disturbing material that usually at the end winds up dehumanizing entire groups of people. That's a problem, and that's something that we need to be concerned about. And I believe that the police culture in every department rests squarely on the shoulders of the police administration and the supervisors. I've been fortunate enough also in my career that because of some expertise I've developed, I've spent a lot of time in different police departments. And this is something that I hadn't thought of until I was putting some bullet points together to speak here today. But when I think back of all the police departments that I spent significant amount of times in, whether it was helping with a case, working on a task force with a partner, and I think of the different police cultures that I observed in each department, whoever was in leadership directly impacted that culture. And, some were better than others. None of them horrible, but some were better than others. Since the unfortunate events with the death of George Floyd are pretty much what triggered this conversation here today, I want to use an example from the Minneapolis Police Department as an example of bad police culture, which probably contributed to this. I have no idea. But what I do have is documented court documents. So the Minneapolis Union President, Lieutenant Bob Kroll, 2007, a group of Black officers sued the department because Lieutenant Bob Kroll, I don't know what his rank was then, was discriminating them, yelling racial epithets at them, and belong to a motorcycle club, if you want to call it that, that has been identified by the Anti-Defamation League as a racist group. According to the court documents, and I haven't seen any denials, Lieutenant Bob Kroll went as far as wearing that motorcycle club's jacket to work regularly with a white power patch on it. Now, remember, this is 2007. After that, he's elected union president. What message does that send? What message does that send to those officers that were aggrieved? What messages does that send to the community? And what message does that send as far as how the legitimacy of that department? Because at some point, especially in larger departments like that, a union leader is almost as much a face of the department as the police chief is. So those are things that we need to worry about, who we choose to represent us. Part of this social media epidemic, which is what I call it, it's the spread of this us versus them mentality. And we must embrace the peace officer aspect of our job, because honestly, that's 90% of our work. We must dedicate time training to that. You know, we have to understand that we are brothers. It's a tough job, and you need to have confidence in the man standing next to you. But ultimately, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be criticized for this, ultimately, because people are going to take it the wrong way, we don't work for each other. We work for the communities we serve. We work together, and we should protect each other from harm. But when you embrace this us versus them mentality, that means that when someone needs to be corrected, they're not going to be corrected because we're going to circle the wagons. And maybe that's what happened in Minneapolis. Maybe that's why that officer got to be there for 20 years with what's apparently a very bad history. Which brings me to my next point. And I hate to be the one kind of, everyone spoke of the positive and I agree with them 100%, but I think these issues need to also be discussed so that we can prevent tragedies in the future. This I will consider like maintenance of a police department. One of them being, when we identify a bad officer, that person should be expelled, not just from the police department, but from our profession as a whole. And here in Pennsylvania, with the large number of police departments we have, including police departments that hire part-time officers, you have these officers that shouldn't be on this job, that they either get fired or forced to leave from one department and they just hop on to the next. Or something really bad happens and they kind of go hide in a part-time department until they, in a way, reestablish their credibility and apply to a bigger department again. So there are things I think that we can do. And these are everybody's gonna try to take it out of context. This is really the minority within police work. But we need to empower the majority to speak up and call these guys out, because they give us all a bad name. And they bring dishonor to our profession, which is honorable. And most of us carry it out that way. At the state level, you know, there's currently no tracking system in place for these problem officers. That's why they get to go from one department to another. And I think our local leaders here can maybe begin to speak with our state legislators on that subject. Because of human nature and the varying sizes of departments that we have, where people maybe hire their cousin, you know, if you have an abusive officer in one department like that, maybe they'll get taken care of and no one is going to discipline them. And for people that are listening that don't understand, we're all, in a way, not just certified by our agency to be a police officer, because we cannot be a police officer in a municipality unless the state certifies us. And if we lose the state certification, we cannot be a police officer anywhere. And now what I would suggest is for those, and again, I'm not talking about the run-of-the-mill complaint where an officer maybe was disrespectful one day because he was having a bad day, because guess what? We're not perfect and we're human. I'm talking about for those officers that are really abusive. We need to establish an avenue for citizens to complain to the state to decertify those officers. So that's something for our county leaders to think about. And the members of the community, they need to work with us. When they see these children that are misinformed, disrespecting us just because we're wearing a badge, they need to pull them aside and tell them, no, they're not all like that. What has that officer done to you? Do you know him? You don't even know him. Just like you don't want to be labeled anything, you shouldn't be labeling people. It's something that we need to work on. Again, not that we have this huge problem in our county, but if it's not addressed, it could become a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer Caraballo. We're going to go to our next presenter, and that is from our Berks County Deputy Sheriff's Department, our Berks County Sheriff's Department, and we have Deputy Sheriff Zachary Smith. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this topic. It was horrendous what happened in Minneapolis, and I would like to share about things that what we can do in department-wise, relationship between youth and public and police departments. We need to reform the Powell Police Athletic League to better, for a better relationship. It starts with the elementary schools on up to high school, that we should have a proactive police officer interact with children, not just disciplinary side, but giving them praise and encouragement. Community policing, as example, like family activities, like car seats and so forth, and they always say, back in the days, it says it takes a village to raise one child. It starts in elementary school where officers can help, and encourage kids and so forth. How many times we walk out in my uniform and a parent walk with a kid and kids acting up and saying, behave, or, you're gonna go to jail. We hear that all the time, as law enforcement and so forth. And I would like to, get into the elementary schools, all the way to high school, and, and give kids high five and so forth. Earlier, Officer Marc Hackney spoke about recruiting minorities. I agree, body cams, I agree with those as well. But how can we build, as department-wise also, we should implement the policy in every department worldwide. If we witness excessive force, we should stop it and report it. We talk about body cams, that protects you and I. Teach appropriate police tactics where we can know the zone of the body that you do not go to, because it could result in death. Neck and throat is one of them, other zones. There are some police departments that we don't have politics trainings at all, and we need that, especially in the small departments. Speak up. We understand that, if you're in a police department, you're a police officer, and some officers are afraid to speak up. When they see infraction, someone's behavior, because they work together in the same department. Also make sure, really that we just have to also learn about cultural awareness classes. We've got to educate and have better understanding about different cultures, or talk with one who had experience with racism. I experienced with racism when I was a juvenile, and that would change me to be in law enforcement. Not only that I have a voice, but also can be a whistleblower as well. I wanted to be in here, and I want to, see more minorities in here, for Caucasian people or other ethnic groups can get along and so forth. And also it betters kind of their community as well, where they feel more comfortable. When I was in the warrant division and everything else, and we had arrests of African-American fellow and everything else, he felt comfortable. You know, he wouldn't relate to me or Hispanic or something. They felt comfortable. And, you know, just my experience when I was in warrant division. All the things, I think we need balance for, you know, as far as specific programs that we can use to aid recruitment of minority youth, includes Explorer programs and cadet programs, and we do have Explorer posts in place in internships as a way of encouraging young minorities, candidates to enter the field of law enforcement. There are strategies to recruit stronger and more diverse police force as well. Main thing is test your message. Help applicants navigate the process. Stay in touch with the applicants. Turn hurdles into opportunities to help. Create a young talent pipeline. Step into your applicant's shoes. You know, police agencies that are rich in diversity are simply more likely to garner individuals' trust among group citizens because the agency is reflective of community and inclusion of police officers and of many backgrounds, experience. This matters for more than just general public perception. I'm asking you, and you know, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? You know, there's many, you know, obstacles that we have to, you know, hammer out and fix. You know, and a quote from Martin Luther King, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Sheriff Smith. Appreciate that great quote to end on. One of my favorite Martin Luther King quotes. From our Berks County Jail, we're pleased to have Captain Miguel Castro. Captain Castro.
Thank you, Commissioner Leinbach. The murder of George Floyd has had a profound effect on me and my family. Simply reading or hearing about the deaths of African Americans or other people of color during police contacts, it doesn't really drive home the plight that the minority communities face. But watching Mr. Floyd die at the hands of someone who swore an oath to serve and protect, while Mr. Floyd and civilians pled for the 4 officers that were present to spare his life, that shook me to the core, and it's shaken the nation to the core. I've had conversations with my kids on the dangers presented by obvious threats like drugs and the lure of gangs. But my kids, very naive to the dark side of policing. Sadly, this whole situation has made it necessary for me to now educate my children on how best to survive an interaction with police. I feel like a hypocrite when I tell my 6-year-old son that he can approach a police officer if he needs help, and then turn around and tell my 14-year-old son that if he approaches the wrong way, he may be killed by that very same officer. To have this conversation knowing how many good, ethical men and women in law enforcement serve their communities honorably and with distinction, it is really heartbreaking. It hurts me. Professionally speaking, the use of force is critical time. It's a critical type of interaction for us at the jail. I preach to my sergeants and lieutenants the importance of getting people off of their chest and onto their feet as quickly and safely as possible after restraints are applied. My expectation is that the person is off his chest and placed on his side or sitting or standing within seconds of being restrained, not minutes. Every use of force incident is scrutinized at various levels within the rank structure, by the sergeant on duty, by the lieutenant who oversees that shift, by me, and eventually by the warden and her senior staff. Video footage, written reports, and all other relevant documents are thoroughly reviewed and preserved. Inmates can even trigger additional reviews through the inmate grievance and appeal process, because every allegation of excessive force must be investigated. An administrative investigation can be the result of questions raised through our normal review process or through the inmate grievance process. These investigations are expected to be comprehensive, and the results must be supported by evidence. Anytime it becomes suspected that a criminal act may have occurred, we refer to outside law enforcement the whole situation and trying to get a criminal investigation going. An important area that I think exists in the jail for an opportunity to create positive strides is how the staff handles interactions with diverse populations. The people who live or work in the jail, they come from different cultures, they speak different languages, they practice different religions, they follow different politics, they have different views on society, and have different levels of physical, emotional, and mental capability. I want to ensure my staff maintains professional bearings at all times during these interactions with people, both with staff members and with other inmates, regardless of whether somebody thinks, acts, or looks differently than them. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to getting this, though. Some staff naturally just get it. Some require extra training. Some just need more exposure to diversity. Some need to be encouraged to do better. And then there are some who simply are unable or unwilling to get it. And separation from employment is the only viable solution to that. It's my goal to have all my staff acknowledge the humanity which exists in all who are different, to respect the differences which exist in all humans. Once again, Commissioner, thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you very much, Captain Castro. Appreciate that. And our final presenter is Detective Gerardo Vega. He works with the Berks County DA, but I want to give a shout out. You did a great job helping us out at our COVID-19 Help Center, one of our bilingual call takers. And so people want to know what kind of people, what quality of call takers did we have? Well, you're looking at one of them right now. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I'm just happy to work for the District Attorney's Office because he provides a lot of training for us. He gives us a lot of freedom and latitude to do the job that we do. And one of them is that because we are bilingual, we have several people that work in our office bilingual. We're available and utilized throughout the local county police departments that don't have bilingual people. And when we are needed, we go out and respond. And he provides us that ability to do so, just like the Muhlenberg Township Administration allows Sergeant Caraballo to respond when he's needed, when they need a bilingual speaker. I just want to say that even just discussing George Floyd's actions, the event that occurred, it was very overwhelming. It's emotional. It could have been a family member or a friend of mine or someone I may have known. That's just my first thoughts when I saw the video. I can't watch the video again, only because I can still hear the voices of those people that were standing around, actually pleading with the officer to take his knee off his neck. And so I just can't watch it again. It's in 28 years that I've been in law enforcement. I've never seen such a disregard for human life, especially from someone who's supposed to serve and protect. We were not trained that way. I was not brought up that way. I've been in law enforcement, like I said, 28 years. I joined when I was 30 years old. And I was blessed. I'm blessed with the Reading Police Department, where I spent 10 years there. And then I left law enforcement for a year and was given the opportunity again to come back, and I'm happy to be back. And I've been here now with the county for 18 years. I've had conversations with my children, specifically my older son, because he is looking at a law enforcement career. And it's been tough, just like I said, just to discuss what happened. And we all, as a family, sat together and hoped for a better future, that this will lead us into the direction that we've always wanted to be. We've come a long way. We've done a lot in the last 20 years. that I know of in law enforcement. Things that we need to do, obviously, based on what all the actions that have occurred throughout the country and the world, we need to work hard to weed out those that can't perform this duty. We just need to weed them out. We make the badge. The badge doesn't make a man or a woman. We make that. And we need to have better representation of those who wear the badge. Obviously, in looking at the incident in Minnesota, I don't have all the information, but my assessment is the response requires of what the call is. The call didn't require this type of action. There was no, I just can't tell you that we're talking about a minor incident that was reported. When they responded, how did it escalate to this level? Again, it's probably training. The gentleman's attitude, I could tell by his face, he had an attitude. I can't read his mind, but his actions, his body language could show that. And we need better training for these type of incidents that we get called out to. It doesn't require this type of escalation. We've done a lot of training to de-escalate situations. As you can see, been in law enforcement for a long time now. I'm a little guy. I'm 5'7". When I show up to an event, I have to learn to de-escalate before it becomes anything higher that requires the use of force, because I'm not a big guy. And there's been a lot of training in the academies to show you how to do that. You learn to talk to people. You try to listen to what's going on. You want to deal with the situation, again, as what is being provided to you, what calls you're getting. If you're getting a call about domestic violence and you're responding to protect those that are being harmed and try to gather the information of those that are committing that kind of crime. Again, the event was very emotional. I think there's great ideas that were provided by the other speakers. I really don't have much that I could add, because they're in the same direction that we want to go. We obviously have to address other things that we can't be blinded to, and that's the violent crimes that exist out there. And we need the community to help us on those things. I'm proud of the leadership that we have in Berks County. Again, I applaud the DA's office and for allowing us to do our job, and he understands what's out there, and he provides everything that we need to do it right. We will not tolerate police violence. We just won't. Police abuse, we just won't do it. And we've investigated officers that have not done their job right. And we've provided the appropriate charges when needed. Thank you again for letting me speak. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Vega. Thank you to all the panelists. We really appreciate your insightful, thoughtful, and I could tell really heartfelt input, suggestions, and I'm hopeful that those of us in leadership, listening, will take to heart what they've heard. At this time, we're going to turn to questions. We have several questions. I want to remind everyone that as far as media, you can ask as many questions as you would like. Give your name and the media you represent. For the public, one question or comment. It needs to be germane to the topic, and we must have your name and also your municipality that you're from. So I'm going to turn to my executive assistant, Mary Buer, and you can begin to read the questions. Those on the panel, if you would like to answer the question, jump right in, and you don't all have to answer every question, but if you have a comment, please feel free. Mary.
The first question is from David McKeel from the Reading Eagle. Are law enforcement officers asked to do too much? Should issues like mental health, drug addiction, and homelessness be handled by social services instead of the police?
Don't all jump in at once.
Well, I'll answer that question, even though I am here from the perspective of being the district attorney. I would like to, to say that our law enforcement are generally our first responders, and that is why they are involved in handling those problems initially. Is that to be their job? Well, that's how their job has expanded over the years. But I think they get a lot of those responsibilities because they are the first responders and they are the first individuals on the scene of when help is needed.
And anyone else want to jump in? One of the things I would add, I know in our children and youth services, when there is a call out to an incident where a caseworker goes out, there's almost always a police officer and the caseworker together. So that does happen in some cases. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question from David Meikle?
I will say that in my experience, especially in the DA's office, Dr. Mahalik and his office and Sam Inc. has been very helpful in several cases that we've had where when we respond to investigations that we conduct, that as soon as we're interviewing an individual and learn that they have some type of mental health issue or concern, they respond immediately. We contact them. We're trained to contact them. We call them and they come out and right on scene and help us in those situations. And we've actually helped a lot of people get the help they need.
Absolutely.
I would like to add to that also. There have been many times where we have had an investigation here that at some point we realized that this person was not as much as a criminal as a mental health patient. Dr. Mahalik has answered my phone calls any time of the day and night. He has made sure I had a representative come out. At times, we were ready to close an investigation where we actually were going to just have to arrest because unfortunately, although this person had a mental health issue, someone is still being victimized and not allowed to live a peaceful life. And he has coordinated with us where when we went to the house, it was the police, pretty much just to make sure everything was okay, but one of the representatives from his office to take that person to get the right help that they needed. That way we don't wind up with mental health patients at BCP and they wind up in the hospital where they should be. He has also, throughout the years, put in so many of his resources into our hostage negotiation team on the resources from his department that he donates in a way to us so that we have a better hostage negotiation team, which is a testament to how we've functioned all these years because most of our call outs, vast majority have peaceful outcomes. So he's a man that definitely should always be mentioned when we have these talks.
Yeah, and I should probably note, since several people mentioned him, Dr. Ed Mahalik runs the Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Department for the County of Berks. He's been here many years and has worked closely with law enforcement for a good portion of that time. Someone else had a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. You have to remember that when the law enforcement officers are called, 911 is called, they dispatch the police there because a crime was committed. The crime was committed, it may have been because of the person suffering from mental health needs. we have a lot of diversionary tactics we can use once that body comes into our central booking center, and it's used all the time. And District Attorney Adams mentioned about that rather than getting those people put into the jail and into the criminal justice system, we can immediately make some phone calls and get that person evaluated and get them the mental health that they need rather than getting into the criminal justice system. So the original call, most of the time, is because that person did commit a crime. That person picks up 911, and that's when the police are dispatched.
Thank you very much. We have several questions, so let's keep going with the next question, Mary.
Okay, Lee Beth Cranmer from Muhlenberg Township. Respectfully, when you discuss the amount of money being spent on training, what kind of training are you referencing? Is there anti-bias training?
Commissioner, part of de-escalation training did include anti-bias, or it included anti-bias training, recognizes the biases within yourselves and the fact that your experiences become the sum of who you are, and you bring those experiences to every call you go on. So while it wasn't specific to bias training, it was part and parcel of not only de-escalation training, but I believe, Ramon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, crisis negotiation training as well included some of that.
Thank you, Chief Powell. Ramon, you want to jump in? You're muted.
I can jump in here, Commissioner Linebacker.
Okay.
I've had discussions already with the FOP, and we intend to sponsor a training in the near future on implicit bias. Again, a problem, and we want to make sure that our officers in Berks County understand this issue, and we will do our best to train our officers to be completely unbiased.
Thank you very much. Next question, Mary.
Nicholas Camacho, Reading Police Department Chaplain Coordinator. Does the Reading Police Academy include as part of their training a cultural diversity and cultural competency for law enforcement course? A course that begins with a basic understanding of culture and how it works, where the starting point is the topic of culture, not diversity. A course where the objective could be A, to equip police officers with cultural competencies, B, observe how conflict management is differentiated across cultures, especially in 4 overarching patterns of culture: justice, honor, harmony, and reciprocity. C, understand.
A lot of us know Nick Camacho. You want to go ahead and answer?
Oh, there's more to his question.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to finish his question?
Go ahead, because we're going to run out of time here.
C was understand a new cultural diversity among different populations of people and acquire cultural competency skills to interact with people of diverse cultures, especially in conflict management.
Okay.
Who would like to address?
This is Officer Hackney from the Reading Police Department. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone here from the Academy to answer that question directly because we do not know. But that was one thing, one question that I did want to know ourselves as far as improving our department, as far as training with diversity, because like I said before, there's a lot of men and women who have never lived in the people of this environment. And I think it's very important that we do, if we don't now, come up with some sort of program that introduces those people who have never been a part of this environment, because like Officer Santiago said earlier, the Hispanic community, the Black community, there are different cultures that have different values. that people have never touched upon before. So we do see this as very important. Unfortunately, neither myself or Officer Santiago have anything to do with the police academy, but it's something that we do look forward to implementing if we don't.
Thank you very much. Yes, Eric, Sheriff Weaknecht.
Thank you. I am the chairman of the Pennsylvania Sheriff and Deputy Sheriff Training Commission in Pennsylvania. I was appointed by the governor, and we have a very diverse academy. It's a 19-week sheriff academy, and we have cadets, deputies from all over the state. It is covered there. And one of the nice things about that, like I said, you have a very diverse group because you have deputies from Philadelphia, Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and also from Forest County. And when you go to the graduation, it is amazing when you see the bond that they develop, because you have someone from Forest County or a very, very rural part of our state, and they are actually living with and training with people from major cities, and it is a really well-run academy, and we cover it there, and we are going to continue to cover it.
Thank you very much. Next question, Mary.
Okay, Malcolm Towns from South Heidelberg. Something I've noticed missing from the media coverage has been statements from the officers about how the actions of a few bad apples have impacted their lives and connections to the communities they have served with distinction and dedication. Would it be helpful for the public to understand that the officers are aware of the negative effect the few can have on their lives as well?
Somebody want to jump in on that?
I think we've all been impacted by this. I'll use an example. Something that really bothered me yesterday. I was driving by two young African-American males that I personally know. They know my old police car. They don't know my new police car. And when I drove by them, I waved vigorously at them, and they just looked the other way because they didn't know it was me. So to answer your question, we understand and we're feeling this because these kids know me. They didn't identify it as being my police car. So they're not happy with us right now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it takes both sides to recognize that, and hopefully with all the work that's being done, we can do some damage control with all the damage that was done up in Minneapolis. But I think the public, and to your question, I think the public is aware of how we feel about that and how we've been impacted. Yeah, it's a shame. I don't know what else to say. Hopefully, we're going to come out of this stronger.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that? Next question, Mary.
Chris Ellis from Reading. Why is the police department trying to put more police officers into the school district? Are you aware of the school to prison pipeline and how this negatively impacts children?
Do either one of our Reading police officers want to try to answer that?
This is Officer Hackney. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. This is new news to me. This is not something I've heard. So I really can't comment on why they're putting more police in the schools. Understand something though. These are with the schools that we deal with. A lot of times, and I know these are children, but understand something about these schools. We have a hard time in our society because of the home. The home has changed over the years. In the inner cities, we're also suffering from the change of the home. We are suffering from There not being a mother and a father in the home. We're suffering from maybe a father, maybe a mother, maybe neither one, because one of or two are in jail, and grandma is raising the kids. So right now, we do have issues with a lot of youth in the inner cities, and that's just not Reading. That's all over the country. But just because if they are adding more police officers to the schools doesn't mean we're trying to be more militant, because there's actually a lot of us, including myself, that takes a lot of pride in educating the youth in the inner cities. There's a stigma about kids in the city. If you don't have a ball in your hand or a microphone, you're not going to make it. And I'm trying to change the mental process that has been put upon these younger kids in a lot of broken homes. And that's not every home. There's a lot of good families in this city. But if we were able to look at the numbers and see what's going on, there'd probably be a lot more negative than positive. So don't see this situation, if it is happening, as a negative. It could be a positive. But at the same time that we're doing this, we're going to need help from the public. They have a responsibility to raise their children the right way. So we don't need more officers in schools. So right now there's a lot of issues that we're dealing with the youth, and but it's not an issue that can't be dealt with the right way. And that's something that a lot of our officers aspire to, is to change the way. Just because someone doesn't have a mother or father, that you could still be somebody, and you could still graduate from Reading High or Citadel and go to Harvard or Princeton. So again, to answer that question, I'm not aware of this movement, but there is another movement, and that's us trying to build up the confidence of the youth in the city.
Next question, Mary.
Ben Durnall from Center Township. I realize this is off topic somewhat, but still a law enforcement topic. Texting while driving and distracted driving is way out of control across the nation and is very troublesome here in Berks. What can you do to crack down on this problem that is quickly becoming the most likely source of road rage and traffic accidents?
Anyone like to tackle that?
Commissioner, I would say this: we do try to tackle that when we can. The way the law is written, it makes it difficult because you have to be able to prove someone's actually texting while driving, not stopped at a red light, that they're actually manipulating the device while they're operating the vehicle. So we agree it's a problem, and we continue to work on it.
Thank you very much, Chief Powell. Next question, Mary.
Marc Detterline, Reading. How can citizens take part in police review and oversight?
Sir, I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but I think the most important thing you can do is contact your department and ask questions. I feel obligated to respond. When people have something they want to know and they ask me a question, I feel obligated to engage them in conversation. And so if you're talking about citizen review boards, I'm not sure what the answer is there right now, but I think the first step is to contact your local police department, ask about policy, ask about procedure, and ask about what their priorities are and how they enforce.
Anyone else? Next question.
Rosemarie Sullivan Sandman from Sinking Spring. Getting to know the people is great. I like that you need to talk a person down before using force. I also like that you are trying to get people into treatment.
Thank you, Rosemarie. We appreciate your compliment of our great law enforcement folks.
Okay, Marquise Richards from Reading. What kind of anti-racist work is the county and the various law enforcement agencies around Berks County doing to ensure that they do not come into our community with the intent to intimidate?
Now, I assume that what he's asking is about hate groups, racist groups coming into our community. I think some of us remember, I'm not going to say the name, but there was a time not that terribly long ago that we had pretty visible hate group in the community. And part of the way you get rid of that is you have people that don't believe that way stand up and set the standard. Anyone want to jump in and comment? We know that those groups exist, that are out there.
Well, I will make this comment. I think that our law enforcement agencies work closely to identify and to who those hate groups are, and to make sure that they are controlled. Of course, we have to also remember that we have a First Amendment, and so we are limited in what we can do, but we have a high level of intelligence with law enforcement in Berks County. We share information regularly, so that is how we monitor it. Controlling it is a more difficult answer that a very difficult question.
Anyone else? Okay, Mary, next question.
Daquan Williams, Reading. What programs are available to get police more familiar with the communities they are supposed to protect and serve?
Well, Mr. Commissioner, West Reading, Spring Township, and Wyomissing hold a Citizens Police Academy yearly, although I'm not sure this year because of COVID-19 that's going to be possible, but it predates my arrival in 2013 in West Reading, so that's probably close to a decade or more that this program is running. We also hold National Night Out and various other events with the community to try to get them involved in what we do. West Reading is fairly well known for their festivals. We're at all the festivals and easily accessible and visible. We've done coffee with a cop. We've done actually cupcakes with a cop. So we're trying to do various things to make sure we're in the community. We still continue to do walking beats and talk to neighbors. And those are usually the most effective, is when you're able to do one-on-one communication and hear and listen to what people have to say, and to be able to act on what their concerns are.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can tell you that in the DA's office, they have detectives that do school events, programs where the schools have called for programs such as internet safety, internet bullying. We have several people that do presentations, and we've been open to those as well when we are invited via the DA's office.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in, Officer Hackney. I think you were referencing this in your opening comments about being in the community, not just in the car. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having officers that are familiar and part of the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And programs are great. But the things with programs is it has to be, things have to, well, not only diverse, but what I'm trying to say is, us as patrol officers, we're with the community the most. And I think in between these events that we bring up, we have the most important role, because we're in that community for 8 hours a day. So, although I do commend and appreciate these events, I think they're great. But I think a lot of times the most important thing is us. We used to do parking walks once upon a time when we were about 220 men strong in the city of Reading. Unfortunately, because of our numbers and our call volume, we're not able to do it as much as we used to do. But when I came on back in 2005, we did parking walks. Usually when there weren't things going on, you were talking to the community, and it got to the point where, you know, when you had holidays, you know, you were over a house for a barbecue, you were hanging out with the community. It was almost like you were getting paid to just hang out with people, and it was great. And we've gotten away from that, and that's something we really need to do a lot more. It sounds cliche, but it's really not. I mean, we're in a business of serving people. And if you are not out of the vehicle, talking to people, getting to know people, then who are you serving other than just answering calls? So I think we need to do a lot more of that, along with the events, because I think events are great also.
Stick with me a second, Officer Hackney. Yesterday, in preparation for this program, I got a call from the Washington Post, and I thought they were actually interested in our program, but instead they wanted me to comment on what I was hearing from county leaders about cutting the budgets of police departments. And I specifically cited the terrific damage that would cause to a police department like Reading, and how in the world is that supposed to help community policing, help connect the community. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's been a challenge for the Reading Police Department because of Act 47, and yet you're saying it's critically important that our officers are in the community and interacting with folks.
Absolutely, and you cannot put a dollar value on safety and relationships. You can't do that. I think if we do that, it will be a tragedy to any community that does. Just to hear when people say that, to defund the police department, what does that mean? What does that mean, defund, to take away? You know, that's not the answer. And every time I hear that, I just shake my head in disbelief that as human beings, that's where we have come as an answer to what's going on, is to take the one thing that the people have. I understand people are frustrated, but at the same time, do you understand, if you take bodies away that keep these people safe when you're asleep at night, so you don't have to worry, do you understand the damage you could do to a city? It just boggles my mind that people can come up with that as an answer.
Yeah, I agree with you. Next question, Mary.
Marie Sykes, Reading. How is Berks committed to protecting undocumented folks in the community?
I think that's a good question. Some of our officers, how do you deal with an undocumented person versus someone else? Do you discriminate, treat them differently? Go ahead.
I wouldn't know because we don't generally ask.
No, exactly.
So, I mean, they treat it like everybody else because we don't ask specifics to whether or not they have that type of documentation.
I agree with Chief Powell. I deal with a lot of people from all race, from all over the world here, and not once I ever asked what is their status. You call for help, I'm there to help. I'm not there to judge anybody. You requested a police officer because you have a problem. My job as a police officer is to try to resolve that problem.
Thank you.
Commissioner, one more thing. I mean, I think Hector's right,
yes.
right on there. The important thing is why we don't ask is because we want them to call. If they're victimized, we want any victim to call. We don't want them to be afraid of what's going to happen when we show up. So Hector's exactly right. Our job is to show up and help the situation, not make it worse for anybody.
Yeah, and that's a great point for everyone to understand. Law enforcement is there to protect and serve everyone. And forget about even undocumented. Somebody visiting our community from another country, from another community. You're there to protect and serve everyone in our community. Next question, Mary.
Bri Tyson from Reading. I understand why a missing police records are free to look up and completely available online. How can we ensure that all police records in Berks County are available the same way?
I'll answer that to a point. Certain police records may be available online, but only certain records. Investigative records are not available online. They are protected and they are not available. So there are certain information which is public, but there's a lot of information is private and protected and unable to even be obtained through a right to know request because it is investigatory information.
So, John, as our DA, do you know how a person that would want to access those available records would do that outside of why missing?
Oh, yes, almost all information which she states why missing, all that information is available through public websites, through the public access like CPCMS, which is a statewide website that you can get criminal records from, but only certain information is accessible. The information that goes for every police department in the state. Certain records are available from each and every department.
Thank you. Next question, Mary.
Jason Hugg, Berks Weekly. In a recent press conference, Governor Wolf proposed communities to create citizen advisory boards as one part of his law enforcement reform strategy. What do you think about the creation of citizen advisory boards and the impact of them in our community?
I'm willing to, I'm okay with having citizens advisory boards. I'd be willing to talk to anybody. So I think it's potentially a good idea.
Thank you, Chief Powell. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I think it's a good idea also because it would open another line of communication between the communities and the police department as far as what services they feel we may need to improve on, and also develop even strategies with them to combat crime so that they do have a safer community. So I agree with Chief Powell. I welcome that.
Yeah, and I believe, as I understand the citizen review boards, they would need to be set up by the municipality that has the direct oversight of the particular police department, just so people, because I've already been contacted, people want Berks County to set up a Berks County citizens review board. I'm not going to say that's impossible, but that would be extremely complicated since the county does not have direct oversight of local policing.
And also to add to that, now that you mentioned that the citizen review boards, you know, people need to be careful. It's easy to call for that, but we have to be fair to the officers also. Mm-hmm. And anyone that's going to serve in a citizen review board, and I'm thinking of it as far as like overseeing almost incidents in the disciplinary process, if that's what we're speaking about here, I think every member that's going to serve on that should go and get a lot of training as far as how we do our job before they make a decision and whether we were right or wrong in any type of incident.
Very good. Next question, Mary.
Makoto Kazuka from Lower Heidelberg. You can't be unbiased, but must understand these biases with all people. More of a statement. Yep. Jess Royer, Spring Township. What community-based policing strategies exist in the city of Reading, the Sheriff's Department, and various municipal forces around Berks County to foster better relationships between residents and law enforcement?
Go ahead and answer. I think this a lot of this was addressed in the community component, but if anyone wants to jump in, please feel free.
Again, I speak about the relationship between the youth and the police department. Again, we need some type of the Powell Police Athletic League, build a better relationship. Again, we spoke about the elementary school on up to high school, communicating with the young youth and so forth out there, you know, in the community, talking with the young kids, playing basketball, talking with them, you know, stopping, you know, when you see a kid at the store, whatever, you know, take the time and talk to them, whether you're inside the store or outside, doing any type of activity, speak with them. That's how you build a better community and as far as dealing with the youth on an everyday basis.
Anyone else?
Yes, I also believe that, you know, not only just come to the events that the different departments have, like night out, stuff like that. Me as a canine officer, I have the privilege to do canine demos for the community, where we love to see the community come out, interact with us, interact with our canines. Not only just that, but when I'm out on patrol, I see kids, I tend to interact with them more. During Halloween, I buy candy while I'm on patrol and I see kids trick-or-treating. I'll have candy for them, give them candies, just interact with the community. Not just adults, but kids, because that's where things start. You know, that's where kids start learning whether or not they can trust us or not. So there's a lot of things that us as officers can do. Birthday parties, you know how many times I drove by and I see birthday parties, I'll go in, you know, say hello. You know, first reaction would be, oh my God, why is a police officer there? But once I'm there, start talking to them, wishing them happy birthday, they're actually glad to see me. They want to see me more. They even offer me food. Stuff like that is very important to close the gap between police and the community.
Thank you. And that was Officer Santiago, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, Officer Santiago.
I thought so. It just, we had the wrong, Officer Hackney gets credit, it seems, every time you speak, so. You don't see that since you're on the phone. Okay, I think, do we have one more question, Mary?
We have two.
Two, okay.
This one's directed to John Adams from Jordan Henning, Exeter. Given that one of the problems of criminal police misconduct is the hesitancy to hurt the rapport between the DA's office and the police, are there any discussions to develop a position for an independent special counsel for the handling of any criminal police misconduct complaints?
Well, thank you, Jordan. I know Jordan, and it's a great question. And really what we do in Berks County is we don't investigate our own. So when we have a complaint on criminal misconduct, generally those complaints are investigated by the district attorney's office. The last thing that we want to occur is for a police department to investigate their own misconduct. So we have policies and protocols in place in our county that an independent agency will investigate those complaints. Generally, that is my office. On occasion, if there's a complaint against my office, that complaint would be investigated by either the state police or the Office of Attorney General. But generally, my office leads any investigation of misconduct that takes place throughout Berks County.
Thank you very much. And Mary, the last question.
Barbara Lopez, Reading. What are the current consequences given to an officer if they are caught acting inappropriately or in an abusive way? Are the consequences and standards consistent no matter the ranking of the officer?
Well, let me answer this question, and maybe someone else wants to also provide some comments. But if the misconduct is criminal, it is referred to my office and we investigate. The consequences are the same no matter what the rank. And the rank will not in any manner interfere or interfere with our investigation or the consequences that an officer could face. It would be whether or not the officer violated a criminal statute. If there's issues that don't lead to the criminal level, or they don't meet the criminal level, then they are investigated internally by the respective police departments. And I just want to comment one further thing that Detective Sergeant Caraballo brought up, and it was a very important point, and that is with misconduct and officers going from one department to another department. We call it, in some respects, it's called pass the trash. There is legislation that has been proposed. The Office of Attorney General, the District Attorneys Association, today the State Police Troopers Association are all on board that this type of legislation should be passed. So that was a great point that was brought up, and that is hopefully going to be addressed by our legislature in the near future.
Well, I want to thank everyone on the call. I'm going to very quickly give an opportunity for a brief comment, a couple sentences from each of our presenters as we close. And John Adams, you're going to get the last word because we're going to start with Sergeant Vega. Sergeant.
Yes, thank you again for having me a part of this meeting today. I really appreciate it. I was able to express our thoughts and feelings on top of what Mr. Adams said regarding investigating law enforcement officers who break the law. We have gone to recent training almost, I would say about 3-4 years ago in that aspect, because we want to honor the badge. We want to investigate those officers that tarnish the badge, and we want to remove them. So we've gotten this training, and everyone in our office, obviously they're very experienced. Most of them are men that have worked for 20 some plus years, and we will continue to work in that direction. I think it's one of the points that were addressed here, as we want to try to weed out those that can't honor the badge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Vega. Captain Castro. We may have lost Captain Castro. He had some connection issues. We're going to move on to Deputy Sheriff Zachary Smith.
I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak again. We're going to try to do our best to get everything as far as this department, Sheriff Department, to improve, to get better, to have better communication with the community, the better square posts, and learn how to go out there and interact with the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Sheriff Smith. Sergeant Caraballo.
I just want to remind everyone that's watching that I know it sounds cliche, but great majority of cops are not perfect, but we're good people. We still have to move forward, and there are things that we can start doing to make sure that we do become better. Because as Chief Powell said, you know, when we stand still, we're pretty much just rolling backwards. Something to that effect. So have trust that there are many of us that are really proud of this job that we do of our profession, that will step up if we see misconduct. And we're here to serve you. everyone, regardless of who you are or where you come from. That's our mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Caraballo. Officer Santiago.
I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak on this panel. I would like the public to know that every officer I work with, very proud to serve our community, especially myself. I constantly, every day, wake up every morning, put on my uniform, and try to do the best I can. Just like my partners here in Reading, here to serve. We don't care the color of your skin. We don't care where you come from. You need us, we'll be there. Even though there's a cluster of people that dislike us and call us a bunch of names, we're even there for them as well. We don't care. We came to do a job, and that's to serve and protect. And that's what we are going to do. We just need to better ourselves in certain other areas.
Thank you, Officer Santiago. And Officer Hackney.
Yes, I too just want to thank everyone for giving your opinion and speaking from your heart. I thank the public for speaking, for sending their questions. The only way to get through this is to break down that barrier between us. Remember, we're all people, we're all sinners, every single one of us. So in order to get through this, we're going to have to break down that barrier and to realize we have families also. This uniform comes off. I'm Marc, shopping at Walmart, when this uniform comes off. I'm Marc, who has children, who's a father, who's a husband. So we're people also, but I hold the people accountable also. Don't fear us. There's a lot of us that want to deal with this issue. So I just want to put that out to the public, and I also want to put something out to us as a nation. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Thank you very much, Officer Hackney. And West Reading Chief of Police, Powell.
Thank you, sir. I'm not entirely sure I can improve upon what's been said by the individuals in front of me. So I'll just say again, thank you to the panel. Thank you to the public. I'm incredibly proud to be a part of this profession. I'm incredibly proud of the people on this panel. And like Sergeant Caraballo said, we do have to keep moving forward. If we're not moving forward, we are moving backwards. So again, thank you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you very much, Chief Powell. Sheriff Weaknecht.
Yeah, I want to thank the Board of Commissioners for putting this forum together. I think it's great to get this out to the public, but it's sad that it took such a horrific incident to get us to this point. This is something that we should have been talking about and engaging with the community even before that. But if there's one good thing that came out of this tragic event, it's that people are talking. And there's going to be changes made. I think they're going to be, for the most part, positive changes. But I want to thank the Board of Commissioners again for putting this forum together.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Weaknecht. Next, Warden Quigley.
Just want to let you know, Captain Castro lost his feed. So on behalf of both of us, we thank you for including us. Again, we are so blessed to be here in Berks County. The community, the law enforcement community, and to all of you on the panel, thank you for protecting us in Berks. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Warden Quigley. And as the sun sets, I'm looking over at John Adams. He's definitely got the sun coming through the blinds. For the last word for our program today, our District Attorney, John Adams.
Well, again, I want to thank the commissioners and every member of the panel. I think it was great to hear from all of you, and we are committed here in Berks County to have unbiased policing, and I really can tell you that we do have some great police departments, some great law enforcement officers. All of law enforcement does a great job. They put their lives on the line every day of the week, and I thank them for the great job that they all do in our county. And hopefully everything will improve as we move forward, and I'm sure it will, not only in the United States, but things will continue to improve here in Berks County. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnhart, Commissioner Rivera, would you like to say a couple closing comments?
Sure, just in closing, thanks to everyone. It was very informative. I think the discussion was very impactful. And I said in the beginning, this should be a community conversation. I think it's begun here, and I think we need to keep it up and find a way to continue to build the trust in the community for law enforcement and the community and vice versa. Thank you.
Commissioner Rivera.
Yeah, thank you to all the panelists who are here today. I appreciate the time that you spent here, the information that you shared. I learned a lot of things here today, and I'm sure the people that were listening learned a lot as well. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for keeping Berks County safe. And please, let's continue to make Berks County an example for other places where police do their jobs the right way, people are treated fairly and properly, so that we can become an area where other people look to and other police departments look at and say, hey, you know what? We need to follow Berks County. We need to follow what they're doing. They're doing a great job there with their policing and their law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to the panelists. I will tell you, I've learned a lot listening to the personal experiences and the input of our law enforcement folks. And I have to agree, I'm more proud now hearing from some of our law enforcement individuals of what we're doing here in Berks County. But I want to remind people, we are a community, and a community is made up of people, all different kinds of people with different beliefs, different backgrounds, different opinions. And it's okay to have a different opinion. It's okay to be passionate, but let's also be respectful. You may disagree with some of the things that were shared today, and that's fine. Defend your position strongly and clearly, but let's do it in a way that we respect one another and that we understand that the vast majority of men and women that are leading in law enforcement, whether they're correction officers at the jail, officers walking the beat, detectives, sheriff's deputies, whatever area of law enforcement, the vast majority of men and women love what they do. They love serving you in the community. We need to stand up for the great men and women that serve our community and let folks know when there is an individual that is acting inappropriately, that we are going to stand up and not stand for that type of activity in our community. We won't tolerate it. And hopefully 5-10 years from now, we'll look back at the tragedy of George Floyd. We'll remember what we saw in the video, and we will say, this was the point that changed America, changed and made Berks County even a better community, and our law enforcement even a stronger and more compassionate force. Thank you very much for joining us, and God bless you.